What's going on, family? This is David John, Senior Pastor of Impact Church, and this is step 3 of the growth track. Today, we're talking about developing your leadership. I'm really excited about this class because we talk about how you, yes, you are a leader. In fact, can you just say that out loud with me right now? Say, I am a leader. You are a leader. And so 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10, let's go ahead and read this together. It says, God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. So many people wonder if they're really the type of person that could ever be a leader. And yet I want you to understand from this verse, God has a big bag of tricks. He's got a major bag, a variety of spiritual gifts. And you have one of those gifts. And every single one of those gifts are to be used to serve each other well. And we view leadership as influence. In fact, I want to read this from your book. It says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. It's about influencing others in a worthwhile cause. There's no more worthwhile cause than what we're doing here. It is not dependent on titles or positions. It's dependent on people discovering their gifts and passions and then using them to make a difference in the lives of others. So you're here to find out what area I'm supposed to lead in. Every single person that is here in our church, we view you as a leader. And that's why we invite you to get involved in the Dream Team, because every person that's on the Dream Team is a leader, not just a person that may have a title as a team leader or team captain or a pastor or a minister. Every single role on our Dream Team, we say, is actually ministerial. Every person has a ministerial role, a role to share the gospel in one way or another, regardless of what it is that you're assigned to do. And so there are some things that stand in the way. Let's go ahead and look at Moses as our example of what could stand in the way of us stepping up to the plate in leadership. Exodus chapter 3, verse 11 and 12 says, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I'll be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God in this mountain. Notice that there are 4 things that Moses said in this whole conversation, which we won't take the time to read right now. 4 things that reveal what would stand in the way of us stepping up into the leadership role that God has called us to. Before I talk about Moses, I want to talk about David. I want to talk about myself really quick, because I've experienced some of these same roadblocks in terms of stepping into the role that I'm in right now as a pastor. My life as a child, I was not a leader. In fact, I was a follower most of the time growing up. I was the little brother. I had a big brother, and I followed him around all the time, and we ended up getting into a lot of trouble together. And when I hit 18, there was a separation that happened, a sanctification, if you want to call it that, where I stopped hanging out with the guys. I stopped doing the things that we were doing on the block together, and I really started pursuing God. And he developed in me some leadership calling, some leadership assignment that blew my mind. And I experienced all 4 of these things in stepping into the thing that God called me to. So the first one, we hear Moses say, who am I? Why would you pick me? And man, can I tell you, did I ask God that question over and over again? Because I could pick for God way better candidates than me. God, why don't you use this person? They got better grades in school. They're more well-spoken. They're in a better position in life. They believe in themselves more than they believe in themselves. Moses said, who am I? And so in the fill in the blank next to that, I want you to write insecurities. Insecurities can stand in the way of you doing what God called you to do. Because let me tell you about your God. He never asks you to do something you can do by yourself. If you're qualified for it and you feel like God is calling you to it, he's probably calling you to do something bigger than what you're doing right now. Because he always asks us to do something bigger than we can do ourselves, because he doesn't want us to do it by ourselves. Notice what God said to Moses is, listen, I'm going to be with you. I know it's too big for you, but I'm going to be with you. So number one, that question is, who am I? Why would you pick me? Why would you want me to serve in this area? Why would you want me to be a leader? Why would you want me to do this thing? Use somebody else. And yet that insecurity can prevent you from your dreams coming to pass. Understand that if God is asking you to do something, it's not just for other people, it's for you too. The second question that Moses asked in this conversation is, what if they? He was concerned about if his brothers and sisters in Israel didn't accept him. What if they reject me? What if they don't accept me? What if they throw me out? What if they turn me into the Pharaoh? And this question reveals fear. Go ahead and write that next to what if they. Fear. Fear is an obstacle that can stand in the way of you fulfilling your destiny. And it will not come to pass in Impact Church. We are not going to allow fear to hinder us. But again, I told you I was telling my story along with Moses' story. Fear, man, fear really tried to keep me from walking into this thing that God called me to do. Even though I was insecure, I kind of got over the insecurity and I was willing to do what God called me to do. But being new in any area can really cause you to experience some fear. The important thing about fear is you feel it, but you don't follow it. You may feel fear, but you don't let fear lead you and decide what you will and you won't do. And so this what if they question is really important. It can hinder people. But scripture tells us that the fear of man brings a snare. You can never decide not to do something because of fear. I believe that's Proverbs chapter 29:25. The fear of man brings a snare. In other words, the thing that I'm so afraid of, if I allow that to lead me, if I follow it instead of just feeling it, I can walk right into the thing that I'm so afraid of. I remember going through I call it a bad experience on the airplane, but nothing happened to the airplane. It was all in my head. Like I just wasn't used to what was going on. And after that, I was always tempted not to fly, but I was very careful. I'm thankful that I had some good leadership and good mentors. I never allowed that to lead me. So I didn't turn down a flight just because I felt fear. I felt it, but I didn't follow it. And if you don't follow your fear, you've got to follow something else. What do you follow? Follow faith. Faith in what God has called you to do. Faith that he's with you. He's not going to leave you hanging. He's not going to leave you by yourself. The third question that could stand in the way of you fulfilling your destiny here at Impact, maybe at your job, maybe in your family, is I have never. Man, do I know about the I have nevers? Because listen, I have never been a pastor before. This is my first time ever doing this, and that can't be a reason not to do something. Everybody had to do something for the first time. But Moses is saying, listen, you somebody else, listen, what if they, and then I have never done this. I don't have the experience for it. Let me tell you something about your God. Once again, he's going to call you to do something that you're not qualified for. He's going to ask you to do something, and you're going to have to go and find out how to do the thing that he's called you to do. Why? Because God does not allow flesh to glory in his presence. He wants to be in a place where he can get the glory. Let God use you. If he's telling you to audition for the worship team, go for it. I've never sang on stage before, but I know I can sing. Worship. Go ahead and go for it. Don't allow that to stand in the way of you fulfilling your purpose. The last question is use someone else. In fact, it's not a question, it's a statement. Moses got to a point where he said, you know what? Here's my cousin Aaron, just use him. My brother Aaron, just use him. But God said, listen, I'm not going to change my mind about what I said about you. And yet this question or this statement, use someone else, it really represents reluctance. It's where you're allowing yourself to draw back instead of move forward. And I don't know what it is that you've been through in your life that has caused you to be reluctant, but every one of us at some point in our lives, instead of walking forward into the thing that God has called us to do, something burning in our heart that we really feel like, man, I could make a difference here, but we drew back. This is a dangerous thing to do because it's an obstacle holding you back from your dreams, from the desires of your heart, because the desire of your heart is wrapped up in the thing that God is asking you to do. And so we've got to make a decision. We're not going to allow any of these things to keep us from serving in the area that we're supposed to, from stepping up into the place of leadership that God has called us to. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 says, but you are a chosen generation. You're a royal priesthood. You're a holy nation. You're his own special people. Why? So that you can proclaim the praises of him who's called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That's the only qualifier. Did you used to be in darkness and are you now in the light? Do you have a story that, listen, I'm not where I need to be, but I'm not where I used to be? If you have that story, I promise you, you qualify to be used by God. Don't allow these barriers, these obstacles to keep you from walking into the thing that God has called you to. It's an exciting thing. Now I want you to go to the top of page 67, and I want to talk to you about the qualities of a leader. We've already defined you as a leader. You are a leader. So what are the qualities of a leader? Daniel chapter 6, verse 1 through 3. It reads this way: it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. And the satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and these satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. The Bible says that Daniel distinguished himself because he had exceptional qualities. He behaved himself in a way that was just above the bar, that was exceptional. And so there's some leadership values that I want to give you that will set you apart from other people that just do just enough. Number one, we love God. If you're going to be a leader, if you're going to serve at this church, one of the things that is a absolute must is you got to love God. If you don't love God, you don't qualify to lead other people to him. God has whispered this to me many times as I was preparing to lead a church. And sometimes you get so busy, man. Let me tell you about me as the pastor, because I already know if I struggle with it, you have to struggle with it. I get so busy sometimes that there's a temptation to not spend my time with God and to allow our relationship to be neglected so I can take care of the business of the church. And God has whispered to me, the only reason the church work that you're doing is important is because the relationship that we have is so great. Because you're inviting other people to have a relationship with me like me and you have. If you neglect your relationship with God, why is it that other people would want to have a relationship with him? So loving God is at the top of the list. You're going to be a leader at Impact Church. You're going to serve here. You're going to be somebody that other people can look at as an example. Number one, we love God. That is important to us as a church. And so Acts chapter 4, verse 13 says, when they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, where did they get all this confidence? They were astonished, and they took note that these men had been with Jesus. The only explanation for what gave them the boldness and the confidence, even though they don't have the degree that confidence usually comes from. They don't have the bank account that confidence usually comes from. They don't drive the sports car that confidence usually comes from. They said the only thing different about Peter and John is they spend a lot of time with Jesus. And I'm telling you, if you prioritize your relationship with God, there's a certain boldness and courage and confidence and faith that is going to emanate from you that wasn't there before. So there are 3 things that you can develop in terms of this point of loving God. Number 3, simply develop your closeness with God. Wherever you are now, just make a vow to endeavor to go deeper, get closer to God than you are right now. The second one is develop your character. The fruit of the Spirit that is living on the inside of us, all of those that are listed there as fruit of the Spirit in Galatians, you want to develop those, develop your character, and not in a judgmental or condemning way where you're beating yourself up about where you're not, but also don't settle for areas in your life that you know are under the bar, that are less than where you know you're supposed to be. And then the third thing is simply develop your calling. And man, have we been talking about that all along? Develop your calling. Whatever it is that you're called to do, work hard to get in that thing. To don't settle. If you know that God has called you to start a business, don't ever settle with the fact that you work for somebody else. That may be where you are right now. That might be what you have to do right now. But don't give up on the dream that God has called you to. Develop your closeness with God. Develop your character. Develop your calling. All of those are connected to your love for God, because He's the one that wants you close. He's the one that wants you to be holy like Him. And He's the one that wants you to fulfill your purpose in life. The next thing that I want to talk about is, in fact, I'm going to let your facilitator take you the rest of the way. There's one phrase at the bottom that I want you to write down, and that is our value. We love people and we pursue excellence. We love people and we pursue excellence, but your facilitator is going to talk more about that in detail, and then I'll see you afterwards.